Sarens, whose brainchild the Free State Project was, to come up here and say a few words, and then we're going to crank up the music and drink all the wine.
Thanks, Carla, and a third welcome to all of you. How many are here at the 6th Annual Porcupine Freedom Festival? How many are here at PorcFest for the first time? Wow, that's unbelievable. You know, this movement really is gathering momentum, and those of you who are relatively new to the FSP, if you see me around, please feel free to come up and introduce yourselves and have a chat. I enjoy getting to do that with all of you. And the point of this festival is really for people to mix, to get to know each other, to socialize, get to see who else is getting involved in this movement. But it really has been gathering steam lately. You hear about the FSP in all kinds of places. Just a couple of days ago, Mary was telling me, my wife Mary was telling me that she had a link on her Facebook profile to the PorcFest page. And one of her old friends from high school said, "Oh, I wish I was going. I've got a couple of friends who are going and it sounds so cool." Just an old friend from high school. Another story that reminds me of, a few months ago, I had brought a speaker into my university, and he was a hotshot political scientist. He's tenured professor at Stanford, pretty big guy in the field. And he was coming in and giving his presentation. And he had some interesting data, and we talked about it over dinner, and he had this way of getting public opinion data. This is very political science geeky stuff, but it's actually kind of important. Getting this public opinion data at the level of the congressional district, which you can't get otherwise, right? You just don't have the surveys that are big enough. But anyway, he said, what you find is that people's attitudes towards politics, they're really on two dimensions. And the standard way of characterizing these is economic conservatism and social conservatism. Now basically libertarians on this spectrum would end up being economically conservative. That basically means in these surveys you're free market. And the social conservatism, that's sort of cultural issues, abortion, gay marriage, things like that, where libertarians say, well, there are ways that we can make government neutral on those issues. So I said, well, this sounds pretty interesting. I want to get your data on congressional districts, get this survey data. And he said, yeah, I bet you would. And I think you guys made the right choice in choosing New Hampshire. My eyebrows kind of went up a little bit. And he said, the 2nd Congressional District of New Hampshire is 2 standard deviations above the mean on economic conservatism. And that's, so you guys know what that means, I guess. But it's kind of political science geek speak for people in New Hampshire are really free market. So I knew he knew about the Free State Project and heard about it somewhere. So the movement's growing, and the Free State Project has often avoided using the term libertarian because we want to have this big tent where all freedom-friendly people feel comfortable, whatever label they use. But I'm going to use that label a little bit in my short talk tonight because I think we can say that we all share this political philosophy that individual rights to life, liberty, and property are sacrosanct and should not be violated by any group of individuals, even a government. And we can call that philosophy libertarian just for the sake of argument. And I actually think that term libertarian has a lot of uses for us here in New Hampshire. I think it helps us more than it hurts us. And it has some strategic value that I'll explain a little later. So I've titled my talk on losing battles and winning wars. And it's basically about how the Free State Project allows us to take all of these annoying and sometimes even infuriating things that politicians do and turn them into strong, long-lasting victories. And the key to it all is being able to say, "We told you so." So I'm going to use a few examples. First, late last year when the Bush administration told us back in September that they needed immediate authority to get $700 billion of taxpayer money to bail out the banks buying their so-called toxic assets, or the entire economy would be in ruins, libertarians opposed the bailout. We were one of the few people to oppose the bailout. And we said that the large banks had created their own problems, they'd made risky loans, and those that had made bad business decisions should be allowed to fail. That a lot of small banks had not made these same problems. And also that the federal government had helped cause the crisis. They had given incentives to give loans to risky home buyers, they had kept interest rates low, they had pumped up the bubble. We also said that whenever the government gets involved on the funding side of an issue, when they start bailing out companies, they're going to get their political fingers in it. They're going to start meddling. It's not going to work the way we think it's going to work. It's going to be favoritism. But the politicians said that American consumers needed to spend themselves into even more debt, that banks needed to make even more and riskier loans, or the economy would collapse. So keep doing what got us into this crisis in the first place, and that somehow is going to pull us out. Well, let's see how that worked out. The $700 billion, they were not used to buy toxic assets at all. Instead, they were used to buy ownership shares in banks, insurance companies, other financial institutions. And in some cases, that gave the government actual majority ownership of these financial companies. Then we found out that some of these corporate welfare queens were were using our money to fund corporate junkets, to give out big bonuses, and that was bad for us because they were doing it with our money. But the politicians got really mad about this and focused a bunch of attention on this, and some of that might have been misdirection because there were even worse consequences to come. The next thing the government did was to take some of that money intended ostensibly for the financial institutions and use it to bail out car companies, which was not authorized by any law. It was illegal. And the politicians told us that, well, they needed the authority to bail out car companies because otherwise they would go bankrupt. Right? And that is what then happened. They went bankrupt. When it came to the financial institutions themselves, the government engaged in a lot of favoritism. Some companies got more than others. In fact, when you look at how the money breaks down, what we know about the money, only about half of it is accounted for. But of the half that's been accounted for, about half of it has gone to 3 companies, Bank of America, Citigroup, and AIG. So they got a lot more than the others. And of course, the whole program is shrouded in secrecy, so we may never know exactly who got what.